What's the key most important part of the deal blowing up issue? What do you think the number one most important part is?
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
Specifically, you just talked about this.
Communication.
No, it is part of it, but this is kind of a sub part of that. What kind of frame? The preframe. What's preframe? I have to let them know what's going to happen before it happens, period. Right? I have to let them know what's going to happen before it happens, because that's what allows me to predict what's happening so that I can manage their emotions proactively. Say it again. I let them know what's going to happen so I can manage their emotions proactively. Very, very important piece there, understanding what that is. Right? So that's kind of the key part for me to do there overall. So that's going to be number one. Is going to be what? I got to make sure I manage their expectations. Yeah, and I screwed up. I went ahead of myself. Number one is going to be set expectations. Number two is going to be manage expectations. Sorry. So set the expectation. Hey, look, here's what's going to happen, John and Mary. We're going to have this home inspection. It's going to come back. It's going to have 40 pages on it. You know what? That's okay. Doesn't mean your house has got problems with it, right? Doesn't mean the house has that bad. Everyone has it, even new construction homes. So when it happens is, I set the expectation before it happens, so when it happens, how do they feel? Normal. This is what's going to happen. Okay, everything's all good. Plane's not crashing. Right? Then I want to manage the expectation by saying, hey, look, remember I told you guys what's happening? I'm going to constantly do what? Remind. Why? They don't remember it. I just told them that before. Right? I've got to remind them over and over. We think that we know that they know because we do this every day. They don't. They're living in a place of fear. They can't really understand or feel what's going on. So my job is to remind them over and over about the expectation I set in the beginning, in the pre-frame. Here's how things are going to happen. Hey, here's a reminder. I told you how things are going to happen, and they're happening the exact same way. Right? Very, very important piece there. Third piece of that, in the pre-frame, I must attack their doubt. Attack their doubt. What does that mean? I must attack their doubt. I can know very early what their doubt usually is, and so my job is really as a salesperson to understand that, really think about that, and get ahead of that so I can attack that with stories, third-party stories, and what I'm really saying in terms of my expectations and managing those. So the salesperson, I'm doing what? I'm seeking out, I'm looking for, trying to understand, hey, look, what's the doubt this person has in their mind so that I can really help understand that, and I can attack that to help them get over the hump they need to do because fear is holding them back. Very, very important piece there. Fourth piece here. This is kind of true for all of us, and Kyle mentioned this earlier. I must make sure I quit reacting. Fastest way to blow a deal up is to do what? React to the scenario. I must be very good and have foresight to understand, hey, look, here's what's going to happen before it does, and make sure I do what? Pre-frame, prepare for it. I prepare through a conversation, I prepare through how I'm operating, I prepare through the words I'm using, but also my energy in terms of how do I show up in terms of my reaction part. If I'm an agent who something comes back on a home inspection or the interest rates jump up to over 7% and I react with a bad energy, a fearful energy, what happens to that person? They absorb the energy and they mirror that back to me. Very, very, very important to understand. I'm also the mirror in this part. Right? Second piece here. I must transfer certainty. Right now there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of how buyers are buying. Why? Interest rates, potential crash, all these things going on of what's happening. So I must make sure that I'm always kind of showing them the difference for them between pain to pleasure. And I'm reminding them the difference between pain to pleasure. What does that mean? Pain to pleasure. Yes, I'm doing what? I'm constantly taking them back and forth. Why? Because when I'm doing that, I'm in control. I'm in control of what's happening in their mind. I'm in control of what their stories are. I'm moving them constantly between, hey, look, you're stuck in Ohio. You don't like Ohio. We're going to get you to this place here regardless if the rates go up or not. And I'm constantly selling that piece, which is super important right, which is the second part of that, is I move that pleasure piece, I'm selling them the promised land. That's the thing they ultimately desire, what they told you about in your discovery, their main why. It's the flip side of the pain. But I've got to make sure, number one, I know that. Number two, I can take them back to that place in the process. The problem I notice with a lot of us is we don't even remember it by the time you get to the part where your deal starts to blow up. You don't even know why they're buying or selling. We forgot about it because you didn't log the notes very well. Or at all. And you got 40 people, 50 people you're talking to, and you can't remember what's going on there. You don't, and you think you have a good idea, but you're not really sure. You want to make sure you have a very, very laser focus on what it is there. 3, I talk about big picture with them all the time. Big picture. What do you think that means?
Win.
What's that?
More or less just a win.
But think about bigger than that, though.
Not every little obstacle is in the way. Like you have to
Yes.
focus on it.
I don't allow them to focus on the small obstacles. I must make sure I'm always painting the picture, painting the artwork for them of what the big picture is, right? That promised land, I don't let small things where, hey, look, John and Mary, just don't let this small thing get in the way. We got to get you guys to the ultimate outcome, which is what you want, which is X, Y, Z.
I used to always say never focus on the labor pains, but just the baby.
Yep. That's a great way to put it, right? Big picture. It's worth it to go through labor pains because you're focused on what? The baby. It's a great way to look at that. Very powerful way to look at that. Number 4, I got to make sure I'm also overcoming outside influences. Yes. And I'm doing that through what?
Third-party stories.
Third-party stories. Hey, John and Mary, you're going to get scared. You're going to talk to your family, and guess what your family's going to tell you? They're going to give you every possible reason why not to do this. You know how I know that? Because they do that to every one of my clients. But the good news, I learned I don't take financial advice from people who aren't where I want to be. And they don't have a house in Myrtle Beach, which is where you want to be. So let's make sure that we're preparing ourselves to not really talk to them about it until you get it closed, whatever you want to do. But you got to know there's outside influences that you got to get ahead of because they're going to help create doubt in that person's mind, which is going to make them not want to follow through and purchase the property. Or sell the property or list with you or whatever it is. Right? Very important piece here. Third piece here. Must repeat and reframe. One of the things I noticed is that most people, they don't repeat things enough. Why? Because we think that they should know it. We think they do know it. But the problem is they don't. That space in between kills them, right? It drives them crazy. So I must remind myself to constantly be aware of the situation and go back to the preframe. Super important piece there. Back to the preframe. Second piece, I must reframe new variables. Reframe new variables. What that means? Reframe new variables.
Something comes back on the inspection report.
And to the next part, I must attack the roadblock. I must attack the roadblock. What do you think that means? Yes. I must anticipate what the next roadblock is going to be. As a salesperson, I must do what? Get ahead of it. I got to be one step ahead through my conversations, through how I talk, through what I'm giving them third-party stories. I have to make sure that I'm anticipating what the roadblock is. I'm getting ahead of that before it actually happens because that is, in addition, another pre-frame in the process. Hey, John and Mary, I know the home inspection is coming back. Right? I know you guys didn't lock your rate in until XYZ. Whatever it is, I want to make sure I'm thinking and anticipating what's happening next. I'm getting ahead of that with my words, my conversation, and my sentence. The key word here is what? Anticipate. Super important there for us. And I kind of tie those two together. Sorry. And the other part here is I must understand what to anticipate. What does that mean? I want to be connected to the transaction in a way that I can understand what's going forward and what's going to happen so I can get ahead of that. It's much easier to neutralize before we get to that point. Fourth piece here. You must know your numbers. Super important. Why does that matter? Yeah, that's good. But what numbers do I really want to talk about here, though? I want to know your closing numbers. Say so-and-so had 4 or 5 deals blow up, and you know what happens when we tell them, hey, look, man, you have 4 or 5 deals blow up? What do they think? Oh, no, man, I haven't really had that many blow up. It's not my fault. Right? They don't even realize that they've had 5 or 6 deals blow up in a row because they're just so busy in the motion of what's going on, they're not looking at what the long-term trend is. And so when you do that, I must track all of it. First part, I must track all of it. Which is my offers written to offers accepted. My offers accepted to offers closed. I need to know what my blow-up rate is so I can do what? Improve it, right? So I can figure out what's going on so I can improve it. Some people, when you look at the numbers, have a massive blow-up rate. And a lot of times it goes back to process, but really it comes back to their game of pre-framing, really. When I see somebody with a big blow-up rate, we'll see 3 or 4 or 5 in a row. What it shows me is they're just pushing them through and they're skipping steps and not pre-framing as strong as they could be on the front end. But here's the thing, if you're aware of it enough and you tracked it, you could do what? Man, my deal's blowing up. Maybe I should just switch this out and get better at my pre-frame on the front end. And I fine-tune, and I fine-tune, and I fine-tune, and I fine-tune, which makes a big deal. Second piece of this is I must own all of it. If I'm having deals blow up and I say, well, it's not my fault, I couldn't help that, guess what? I'm not owning it. There's something you could have done to anticipate that to make sure you can help overcome that on the front end in many cases. A lot of times we don't own it, we just chalk it up to the game, and so we're not able to improve on that in the process and how I move forward. And I want to have a target of less than 1 out of 10. Only 1 out of 10. That's my target. Which would be what? Yep. Some way higher than that. But I have to be purposeful and do some measures. Is it a pain in the ass to track all that? Yep. Good news is it tracks a lot of that for you. You guys can just ask and kind of go through that process with him and say, look, here's what's going on. Right? Very, very, very important piece here for you guys to understand. It's a little different. I taught them this before. I shared that video a couple weeks ago. This is something we've seen a lot lately. I wanted to share it with you guys because I just see this as some of the things that we're missing going through that process.